Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm going. I got a bit confused there with my personality. I was almost presenting as a man, and that wouldn't be listened to. So I better get back to being a little cowgirl. When I speak about the subjects I'm going to speak about this morning, yeah, we're all going to have a little exploration into some complexities about the Australian regional areas, about some complexities of colonisation and settlement in Australia. And how women have both helped and hindered the situation. And this is inspired by my auntie, who I love very much, and her slightly ambiguous passive-aggressive Facebook comments, based on over 3 years of comment and then a direct accusation and this kind of passive-aggressive Sunday school strategy, coming after some kind of skeletons are just kind of wheeled out of the closet. A lot of things coming out of the closet in the last couple of weeks. Just a whole bunch going on around this beautiful state, Western Australia. And I'm a little bit slow to start this morning. And so when I'm feeling slow, when I'm feeling a little bit lost for direction, and I can't quite jump on and thrust myself into the topic of the day, oftentimes I'll pick up a random book. I'm very fond of a couple of different books that I use for this purpose. One of them is the dictionary. The dictionary, I find that's actually my favourite. I usually choose about 5 words in the dictionary. I open up randomly and I let that kind of the interplay between those words and my subconscious kind of tell a little story about where I might be and what I might be feeling. It's like a little window to the soul, I find. If you put a little bit of intent into it and just let yourself interact with your subconscious. But another book is also the Bible. My auntie actually introduced me to the Bible, and I actually really want to thank her. And I'm not being passive aggressive. I'm dead set serious. If it wasn't for my auntie introducing me to Christianity, I would be completely lost. It is a beautiful foundation for a life. And that's why I do consider myself as a Christian of sorts. I don't particularly know what type of Christian I would be. I'm kind of the type of Christian, I think, that would like if Jesus put out a new album and say he hadn't put out an album for like 5 years, I definitely would buy the album on the first day. That's the type of Christian I am. I would go out of my way. I would do whatever it took to get the money, and I think all us girls understand what that means. And once I got some money from somewhere, I'd definitely go and buy that CD off JC. If he hadn't released one in a couple of years, I'd be like, this is amazing. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity to purchase a CD from Jesus, and I would buy it with my money. However I got to get my money. And that's Secret Girl's business, okay? However I get my money, whatever it takes. Isn't that right? Whatever it bloody takes to get your money, to look after my little cherubs, my little bambinos. So let's read a passage from the Good News Bible. It's upside down. It's the Good News Bible. It's up the right way. Finally. Oh, it's up the right way. This is like the normal Bible, except it's just full of good news. And also all the terrible news that exists in the Bible. So let's just go. Let's go for it. Low energy today. Oh, God. If only there was some pharmaceutical solution. There's usually one. Have you got an itch? Pharmaceutical solution. Have you got a scratch? A pharmaceutical solution. Have you got a deeply traumatic issue from your childhood caused by the trauma caused by over exuberant medical professionals thrusting themselves into the complex and very fragile dynamics of your family and your psyche, then I'm guessing they've got something for that too. That's a bit of a loop, isn't it? If we could all just continue in that loop. It's like the ultimate strategy. I wonder where they learnt all that fucking swearing. I wonder where they learnt all of that from. And they do look so good in those blue little outfits, those doctors, don't they? They look with the stethoscopes, and they're always very clean cut, and they don't usually swear. And they've got a big smile, and the dentist friends keep their teeth very white. And so when you come into their sales office, they usually get you to sign the whole bloody thing contract, and you walk out of there going like, I went in to just look at the Corolla, and I walked out with that brand new Mercedes. It was, he was such a charmer. He charmed the absolute pants off me, and I now have four disorders that are going to be medicated for life. Isn't that just fabulous? It's a big problem when a family has 5 girls, isn't there? Kind of like a little army of wenches that are just sent out to strip all the men of their resources and bring them back to daddy. Is that how it went? A little bit like that. How did Daddy tell you how to do all that? Was there a bit of something not nice going on? Who knows? Some things are better left in the closet. Haven't had a lot of Grandad popping in. He's very quiet as far as the old psychic abilities come in. He occasionally pops in and gives a little whistle, but then there's a whole bunch of silence from old Grandad Wilkinson there. Don't exactly know what that's all about, but let's ask Nana. Let's ask Nana, not Wendy Nana. No, the previous, the original and the best Nana, my Nana, her mum. Let's ask her to guide us this morning on selecting from the Good News Bible. I don't know whether Nana read the Bible. Maybe she read tea leaves, but I'm just not sure whether she read the Bible. But she's gonna guide my finger this morning. And there we go. I've done it. This is the passage that my Nana has chosen to read to the family here this morning. I once knew someone wicked who was a tyrant. He towered over everyone like a cedar of Lebanon. But later I passed by and he wasn't there. I looked for him but couldn't find him. Notice good people, observe the righteous. Peaceful people have descendants, but sinners are completely destroyed and their descendants are wiped out, metaphorically. The Lord saves the righteous and protects them in times of trouble. He certainly does. He just really does. I have always felt his protection over me. The Lord, that is, and not his fucking drunk son. Who, see, this is why I do consider myself a Christian, because I once upon a time, a long time ago, I was the drunk fuck-up son as well. And so I empathise with old JC, and I go with I basically go with his example, except then I don't commit suicide in front of everyone. It's like that. So I go with his example, which is impossible to match because he didn't fucking do anything. He died and he committed suicide publicly before anything could be done. So that's why he died for our sins, because he was the most narcissistic one to commit suicide in front of everyone. And he set that bar so fucking high that so many people have felt the need to publicly commit suicide in order to appease his impossible example. So what I find with Christ, with Jesus, is that Jesus helps me learn, but there should be a big amendment on top of it. It should be like, do as I did, live like Jesus, except the public suicide bit. You can't just go in like a bull in a china shop and expect to change radical things in the world in one foul swoop. Even if your mum tells you that you are the most amazing person in the world and this is your birthright, and even if there's a bunch of weird people around you telling you how amazing you are, you should probably not publicly commit suicide, because it's not going to help. You're actually better off just living and taking a small task that you can successfully achieve in your lifetime is going to help you and the world and your family a whole lot more than some type of Marvel, DC Comics reality where you save the whole thing in one foul swoop. And I think that's what Jesus teaches me. He's almost like the original rebel without a cause. He had the whole cause, but he failed in it. Even after the fact, in his name, it has failed and has caused a lot of death and destruction. And so that's a lesson too. That's actually the lesson like I learnt from my mum. She went into the pharmaceutical industry and basically became a sponsored spruiker for that, drug addict. Like what the bikies do with meth, except with nicer clothes and no tattoos. Exactly the same as that. And I've learnt from her negative example what not to do in my life to make my life and my family's life an improvement. So we can learn a lot from people that make catastrophic mistakes in their lives, like Jesus. And I think that's the original lesson. I think the original lesson is that. And in the story, I think the devil gets a little bit of a bad rap, because obviously we all know that what the metaphor of the devil means is that we all have good and evil living within inside us. And so this was going on in Jesus's mind, because he wasn't able to access any pharmaceutical medications. He was exposed to the full unrelenting onslaught from his subconscious. And so this balance between his mother telling him to do everything all right now, no matter what the consequences, and die publicly and fail, and his, what I consider almost like an older brother archetype of Satan or the devil, telling him to just chill out for a bit and take his time and take time to smell the roses, take time to enjoy the fruits of life, and you don't have to do it all in one go. Because, like, I think his older brother had more experience, and he was kind of like, and my older brother did this to me. He kind of stepped in. He's like a step brother or a half brother, and he kind of stepped in and tried to get me to inject poison. Now, that's the same thing, but with a wrong approach, because I had learnt from our mother that medications and pharmaceuticals is basically just a big scam, and so I'd seen that the original oldest boy was acting a little bit like Jesus. He's like, if we all just get the vaccine, we're all going to be safe. And I'm like, no, that sounds like you're on a path to suicide there. And so I didn't. And what the Christians will try and tell you is that that's some type of devil worship or Satan worship, but really, it's like What kind of message is it to send to kids to say, yeah, kids, before you're 33, you've got to fucking save the entire world, otherwise you're a complete failure? And the example of it's like, well, yeah, who's done that? Who did that? He didn't do it. He didn't actually succeed. In the quest. And that's the lesson that he's taught everyone. So he is, in fact, it's very weird. It's like he has done what he said he was going to do with enough time and a little bit of help by some newcomers to kind of be like, yeah, don't be stupid. You've got to be realistic in your ambitions. We are but earthly creatures. And somebody had to do that. Someone had to show that you can go too far. Like right now, I could go too far. I'm kind of on a very narrow, very focused trajectory. But if say I just decided right now to be like, I don't know, to just take a big knife in and free all the Aboriginal prisoners from Hakea prison, which I was put into for sharing a photo of my family that already existed. So resharing a photo that already existed in the place. It's like, anyway, we won't get into the details, but if I went in and knocked on Hakea prison with a big knife and said, I'm freeing all the Aboriginal prisoners that you've enslaved under these tyrannical laws, I'd end up in prison as well. And potentially because I had a weapon and I intended on committing mass crime and a mass exodus of a prison, those naughty wardens there, they would immediately stop playing Grand Theft Auto and being paid. I saw this happening. They do play a lot of Grand Theft Auto in there. They would immediately stop, and because of all that Grand Theft Auto, they would pick up the guns and they'd shoot me, and I'd be dead. And look where I'd be. I'd be exactly like Jesus. And although that might be some type of Ned Kelly fantasy Wild West adventure, it doesn't really do much to getting the illegally imprisoned Aboriginals out of jail. I find a slower, more methodical process that is very hard work. It's a lot less work to just rock up at Hakea with a knife and say, let them all out, you dickheads. But it's not going to work. Yeah, I could flip over as many tables as I wanted. It's not going to work. They're going to shoot me in cold blood out the front of Hakea prisons. That's why I don't do that. That's why I use my voice here. So we see that Christianity has a very important message to teach everyone. Let's go one more post if we can not run out of storage. And I'll do it now. And let's just talk about this. The streets. Rushing this way in the city squares. They flash like torches and dart about like lightning. The officers are summoned, they stumble as they press forward. The attackers rush to the wall and set up the shield for the battering ram. The gates by the river burst open. The palace is filled with terror. The queen is taken captive, her servants moan like doves and beat their breasts in sorrow. Like water from a broken dam, the people rush from Nineveh. Stop, 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 the cry rings out, but no one turns back. Plunder the silver, plunder the gold, the city is full of treasure. Nineveh is destroyed, deserted, desolate. Hearts melt with fear, knees tremble, strength is gone, faces grow pale. So Nineveh, this is the fall of Nineveh. And what you can see is a bunch of people kind of with spears. I'll hold it there, like that. Like spears and shields, and there's flames coming from the place. And I find that very reassuring, because that's a lot like the story I said about going to the prison and letting all the prisoners out that are illegally imprisoned in there. It's very similar. And so I find that Nana, who I feel was imprisoned as well, has guided me to all of this. And that's a lot like what happens in here a lot. A lot of people are guided by ancestral forces, and they're spoken to by God and they have direct communion with God and all these things. And it wasn't just Jesus. Like, Jesus is just one of the blokes who did some stuff, but it wasn't just him. There's lots of people that have done that in time. There's lots of people from all different cultures. And Jesus's failure as a man, but with his narcissistic flair of thinking he's the only one, teaches us an important lesson about humanity, about sometimes if someone is very cocksure and martyrs themselves and fails in their process, that a lot of ignorant people will prop up his story and kind of attach themselves to it as if they're doing the same thing as Jesus, when really they're actually being slow and methodical like Jesus should have done. Sometimes in life, the message comes in funny ways, and you do actually succeed in what you were saying you were going to do, despite it not being the exact way you said you were going to do it. And I find this is what Jesus is all about. So it's like, he's done it. He's the Messiah, he's done it, but he's failed epically, and in his name, atrocities have been committed for thousands of years. And it's created confusion, and it's created a blockage so that people do not actually try to achieve anything smaller, because it isn't enough for Jesus, and anything larger will just end up with them dead. So we find that with enough time, this message actually is the most important message about balance between the forces of good and evil, so that in your life, you get to continue on and not die as Jesus did. So Jesus died so you could be successful in your balance between the forces of good and evil, to be an effective human being and to enact change onto a very disrupted, very chaotic world. It's the reintroduction of duality into the Western system of belief. Through Christianity, through Christ. Through Christ, I learnt all these things. So he's the door. Jesus Christ is the door. He's the door you want to look at. He's the friend that's leading you off into the back alley to smoke crack. And sometimes you might do it and sometimes you might not. And if he dies smoking crack in a train station, the lesson he is teaching you is to not do things by extreme measures. Yeah, we need to have a balance between our ambitions for world peace or for crack. We need to balance those things so that we don't end up publicly sacrificed in a public narcissistic display of suicide. Which, I mean, that's a lot more complicated, a lot more nuanced. It's almost, that brings him up to the kind of J.K. Rowling's level of storyteller, because he's told it into perpetuity. He's told it into the future, knowing that all these complex subjects will butt against each other and cause all this friction and force people to expose themselves to the undeniable truth of the revelation of his death and birth and rebirth and all these things. It's almost as if it's a story of humanity that's just been echoed throughout the ages. And when I do look up at our sky into the south and I see the Southern Cross up there, it fills me with the Holy Spirit, and it makes me think of a song from Mary Poppins that's called "Let's Go Fly a Kite, Up Where the Air is Bright. Let's go fly a kite and send it soaring up in the atmosphere," because that's where we see it. Up where the air is clear. Let's go fly a kite. because it looks like a kite in the sky. It could look like a crucifix with a spear going into it, or it could look like a beautiful kite with a little string attached to it. And I think the kite metaphor is a more beautiful metaphor to display Jesus' resurrection, because Jesus was resurrected into the sky in Australia, down in the southern hemisphere. And that's why it took so long, because we've only just got here. We've only just got to Jesus in the sky land. Jesus in the sky with diamonds. Jesus in the sky with diamonds. And so we haven't had very long. And that's where I get back to the thing I was talking about before, which is where when we got here, we still had all that conquering Jesus energy. And we conquered the landscape and the people a lot like Jesus tried to conquer the Romans. Because they put up a whole lot less of a fight than the Romans. So it was a bit like a walk in the park, or so we thought. We thought we'd just clear this land and we'd end up with a wealth of abundance of cleared agricultural land, with the sun beating down on it, which would grow our crops, because we didn't have enough experience with overabundance of sun. Except, a bit strangely, we actually had a bit of experience with an overabundance of sun. In fact, it was the overabundance of sun that sent us flying around all over the world with this kind of totalitarian conquering concept. So Jesus cleared all the land here. He did it in the form of just the Christians from England and the Catholic Church. And in Jesus' name, the place was laid to waste. And because it was impetuous. It wasn't slow and methodical and cautious and careful like Jesus' older brother was trying to recommend him to do, and also like that little snake in the garden was trying to... No, he didn't. The snake in the garden told them to be impetuous and eat the fruit. Didn't he? He said, eat the fruit. Don't listen to that fucking old dickhead. And that's the arc of Satan or the devil. He's a troublemaker. He's the older son that has a difficult job to do for God, because he's got to first get man to be like, right, yes, you can all live in the garden, but you got to fuck off. He knew that it was going to cause all this ruckus. And then he gets his little brother comes along and he goes, right, you all want to do all this now and you're this thing because Dad told you, but you're not being patient. I understand patience. That's why I initiated the fall. You're just the first act of the fall. And then after the first act of the fall, against his older brother's advice, Jesus suicided himself, offed himself. Suicide by police, that's what they call it these days. So he did that, and then this is where the older brother's patience really kicks in. He knew that would lead to man exploring the utter hell of their knowledge of good and evil as the original fall initiated, to the point where we almost kill ourselves by trying to become gods and trying to know as God does the power of good and evil. We expected it was good. Only good could come from burning and ploughing down millions of trees and rounding up human beings and killing them and putting them in camps and trying to re-educate them and stealing their children, all these things to build cities that turn into palaces of sin. And now we live in the shittest city on earth, surrounded by a desert that's in weight. It's far larger than the deserts in Israel or Palestine. And who do we blame? We blame the impetuous example set by our very forward-thinking prophet all those years ago, knowing that only a revelation that we all received at the same time would be enough to kickstart us back into gear and replant the bloody garden. And I encountered a snake, a couple of snakes, and that's been a constant thing, because We clear the place because we're afraid of snakes, and we're afraid of snakes because they made us fall. But snakes are an integral, actual part of the biome, and they actually get rid of things like rodents, things that trouble us. And rodents and things, they're actually just a symptom of our agricultural obsession. And so we store too many foods like grains and things, and then the rodents come in, and the snakes actually try and help us out with that. They try and get rid of all the rodents. And we can't, when we clear the land to make it look like a living room floor so that we can see the snakes, that actually just gives the snakes less habitat. And so then they want habitat just like we do, like our living rooms, they want a living room. And so then they end up coming in and trying to share the place with us. So my personal thing is always that, well, we should just give them more habitat in the form of like rock outcrops and understory of trees and things like that. And we shouldn't just burn and plough and graze every square centimetre of the place that the snakes used to live in Jesus' name. Because Jesus failed. Rome is still very powerful. The money lenders are still, in fact, lending money. A lot of them in Jesus' name. Like, he didn't succeed until now, when he does, and we show that it was his example of public suicide that showed or inspired me from beyond the grave, a bit like Nana's showed me from beyond the grave, how to be patient. Because I remember my impetuousness of youth. I wanted to do all types of things, including blowing dams up. And I didn't do any of it because my father, my actual living father, taught me to be patient. And because he was older, I saw that it had worked for him. He was still, in fact, alive, and he hadn't been publicly suicided and killed. And so I thought, Dad might be onto something here. I said, Dad's patience does provide him with some type of stability, which I benefit from. And so if I can think of my father and then God as the image of my father, now that my father has passed, I listen first of all to God, second of all to my father, and then I learn from all the prophets that have existed in this book on equal measure. I suppose I still call myself a Christian because I said Jesus is the door. The enigma of why that religion, why that one man has been so celebrated was too much. It was too much of a juicy, I could not put it down. I was like, let me see about this. And so Jesus was the door. Moses wouldn't have been the door for me. Although it's a wonderful story, it wasn't enough like my own life to really draw me in. So it took someone like Jesus, the failed prophet, the ultimate failed prophet, to inspire me. And I think that's meant to be distributed. That same effect I had, a lot of people can have if they're given that morsel of that it was a failure. That's the key to the door. So you can see the door, it's everywhere. Christianity is everywhere. Jesus is everywhere. He's in everything. He's all over the place. He's in our movies, he's in our books, hidden sometimes not hidden. But without the key of recognizing that it was a failure, then you won't understand the lesson that he intended. Because he's the one person who was allowed to do that. He's like, buggy is, I'm going to publicly kill myself